The stars looked different from this far out. Commander Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the Pathfinder, watching the view screen display a star system humanity had never visited before. Epsilon Eridani. It was supposed to be a routine exploration mission, the kind Earth had been sending out for the past 5 years since faster-than-light travel became possible. Commander, I'm picking up something on long-range sensors, Lieutenant Ben Carter said from his station. His fingers moved across the console, bringing up data that made his eyebrows rise. Multiple ships, big ones. They're not broadcasting any identification signals we recognize. Jake walked over to Ben's station and looked at the readings. 5 ships, each one at least 3 times the size of the Pathfinder. They were arranged in a formation that suggested military discipline. His stomach tightened slightly, but he kept his voice calm. Dr. Chang, what do you make of this? He asked. Dr. Lisa Chang was already pulling up everything the ship's computers had on file about unknown vessels. She was the best xenobiologist Earth had, and her instincts about alien life had saved them before. She studied the screen for a long moment before shaking her head. Nothing in our database matches these energy signatures, she said. But the formation and behavior suggest they're waiting for something. Or someone. Jake made his decision quickly. I'll stop. Ben, keep us at a safe distance. Send a standard first contact greeting on all frequencies. Let's see who we're dealing with. The message went out, carrying humanity's hope that whoever these beings were, they would be friendly. For 10 minutes, nothing happened. The alien ships remained in their formation, silent and ominous against the black of space. Then the communication system crackled to life. The voice that came through was harsh, with strange clicking sounds mixed into words that the translation software struggled to process. When it finally came through clearly, the tone was unmistakable. It was the voice of someone who expected to be obeyed. Primitive vessel. You have entered territory claimed by the Krillian Dominion. You will power down your weapons and prepare to receive our representative. Resistance will not be tolerated. Jake exchanged glances with Lisa and Ben. The lieutenant's hand hovered near the weapons controls, but Jake shook his head slightly. They were outgunned and outsized. Better to talk first and understand what they were dealing with. This is Commander Jake Morrison of the Earth vessel Pathfinder. We come in peace and didn't know this system was claimed. We're happy to speak with your representative. There was no response, but one of the alien ships broke formation and began moving toward them. As it grew closer, the view screen showed details that made everyone on the bridge stare. The ship was massive, built with sharp angles and dark metal that seemed to absorb light. It looked like something designed to intimidate, and it was working. They're requesting docking clearance, Ben said quietly. Granted, Jake replied, but keep shields up and have security standing by, just in case. 20 minutes later, Jake stood in the Pathfinder's main airlock with Lisa and 4 armed security officers. The door hissed open, and the Krillians entered. They were tall, easily 7 feet, with bodies covered in scales that shimmered between green and blue. Their eyes were yellow with vertical slits for pupils, and when they moved, it was with a predatory grace that made Jake's instincts scream danger. There were 3 of them, but only one stepped forward. He wore what appeared to be ceremonial armor marked with symbols that probably indicated rank. I am Ambassador Velcor of the Krillian Dominion, the alien said. His voice was clearer now without the communication system between them, but the arrogance in it was even more obvious. You are the ones who call themselves humans? That's right, Jake said, extending his hand in greeting. Welcome aboard the Pathfinder. Velcor looked at Jake's hand as if it might be diseased, then turned away without acknowledging the gesture. He began walking down the corridor without waiting for an invitation, forcing Jake and the others to follow. Your vessel is small, Velcor said, not bothering to look back. Primitive. Your technology is at least 3 centuries behind our own. That you managed to achieve faster-than-light travel at all is surprising if crude. Lisa's jaw tightened, but she kept her voice professional. We're a young spacefaring species. We're eager to learn and establish peaceful relationships with other civilizations. Velcor stopped and turned to face her. His yellow eyes studied her with what looked like amusement. Peaceful relationships. How charming. Tell me, human, how many of your kind exist? About 12 billion, Lisa answered. Mostly on Earth, but we have colonies on Mars and Europa. The Krillian actually laughed, a harsh sound that echoed in the corridor. 12 billion. The Krillian Dominion rules over 200 star systems. We number in the trillions. Your entire species is a rounding error in our census data. Jake felt anger rising in his chest but pushed it down. This was first contact. They needed information, needed to understand what they were dealing with. Ambassador, perhaps we could continue this conversation in our conference room. We have a lot to learn from each other. Velcor made a dismissive gesture but followed Jake to the conference room. Once they were seated, the Krillian produced a small device that projected a holographic document into the air between them. This is the Accord, Velcor said. It is the document all species sign when they encounter the Dominion. You will take this back to your leaders on Earth. They have 30 of your days to accept its terms. Jake leaned forward, reading through the floating text. With each paragraph, his expression grew darker. The Accord wasn't a treaty between equals. It was a surrender document dressed up in diplomatic language. Humanity would acknowledge Krillian supremacy, pay yearly tribute in resources and technology, allow Krillian overseers on Earth, and accept restrictions on further space expansion. In exchange, the Dominion would offer protection from other hostile species. This isn't a partnership, Jake said slowly. This is submission. Call it what you wish, Velcor replied, waving one clawed hand dismissively. The terms are standard. Every species we have encountered has signed. Some immediately, understanding the wisdom of accepting reality. Others required more persuasion. Either way, they all sign eventually. Lisa spoke up, keeping her voice steady despite the fury Jake could see in her eyes. And what happens if we refuse? Velcor smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. Then we classify your species as hostile. Your worlds are quarantined. If you attempt to expand beyond your current systems, we destroy your ships. If you resist further, we assimilate your population by force. Your people become labor for the Dominion. Your technology becomes our property. Your planet becomes a resource colony. He leaned back in his chair. But this never happens. Because every species, when faced with the might of the Dominion, makes the logical choice. Jake stood up slowly, his hands flat on the table. I need to consult with my crew and contact Earth. This is not a decision I can make alone. Of course, Velcor said, standing as well. You have 30 days. Use them wisely. Study your history if you have any doubt. Empires rise. Empires fall. But the Krillian Dominion has stood for 3,000 of your years. We have conquered species with technology that would make you weep with envy. We have crushed rebellions from civilizations that had been spacefaring since your kind were still climbing trees on your primitive world. He moved toward the door, then paused. Oh, and Commander Morrison, do not attempt to flee or hide. We have placed tracking devices on your ship. We will know where you go and what you do. Consider it a courtesy so we can find you easily when the 30 days expire. After the Krillians left and returned to their ship, Jake called his senior officers to the conference room. Ben, Lisa, and the chief engineer, a nervous man named Danny Foster, all looked shaken. They're serious, Danny said, his hands trembling slightly as he held a tablet. I ran scans while they were here. Their ships have weapons that could turn the Pathfinder into dust in seconds. And that's just the patrol fleet. If what they say is true about their empire. It's probably true, Lisa interrupted. Beings like that don't bluff. They don't need to. They have the power to back up everything they said. So what do? Ben asked. We can't just let them enslave humanity. Jake looked at each of them, then activated the communication system. I'm sending all of this data back to Earth immediately. Every scan we have of their ships, every word Velcor said, everything. Earth needs to know what's coming. He took a deep breath. And I'm including my recommendation. Which is? Lisa asked quietly. That we refuse, Jake said. That we fight. Because if we accept that document, we stop being human. We become pets, property. We might survive, but we won't be free. And a life without freedom isn't worth living. Ben nodded slowly. A lot of people will die if we resist. A lot of people will die either way, Jake replied. At least if we fight, we die on our feet instead of on our knees. Lisa pulled up star charts on the display. If we're going to fight, we need time. Time to prepare. Time to build defenses. Time to figure out how to fight an enemy that's so much stronger than us. Then we buy time, Jake said. We play along. We act like we're considering their offer. We don't do anything to make them think we're... The emergency session of the United Earth Council began exactly 4 hours after Commander Morrison's message arrived. President Angela Hughes stood at the head of the massive circular table, where representatives from every nation and colony sat. The holographic display in the center showed the Krillian ships, frozen in their intimidating formation, while text scrolled through the terms of the accord. Angela had been a general before becoming president. She had fought in the resource wars, had seen combat on 3 continents, and had made decisions that sent soldiers to their deaths. But she had never faced anything like this. The enemy they were dealing with now made every human conflict look like children fighting in a sandbox. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began, her voice carrying across the chamber. 3 days ago, the Pathfinder made first contact with an alien civilization. As you've all seen from Commander Morrison's report, they call themselves the Krillian Dominion, and they have given us an ultimatum. Submit to their rule or face destruction. A representative from the Asian coalition stood up, his face pale. "Madam President, surely we must consider accepting their terms. The report makes it clear that their technology is far beyond ours. Fighting them would be suicide." "Suicide," Angela repeated, letting the word hang in the air. "Perhaps. But what's the alternative? We become a slave species. Our children grow up under alien oversight. We lose the right to determine our own future. Is that better than death?" "It's better than extinction," another representative called out. "We need time. Accept their terms now. Build our strength in secret, and maybe in 100 years we can rebel." Admiral Kevin Stone, head of Earth's defense fleet, slammed his hand on the table. He was a broad-shouldered man with gray hair and scars on his face from a ship explosion years ago. "That's the coward's path. And it won't work. You think they're stupid? They've been doing this for 3,000 years. They know every trick, every strategy. If we submit now, we'll never be strong enough to fight back. They'll make sure of it." The chamber erupted in argument. Some agreed with the Admiral. Others insisted that resistance was pointless. A few suggested trying to negotiate better terms, as if the Krillians would bargain with beings they saw as insects. Angela let them argue for 5 minutes, then raised her hand for silence. "I've asked Dr. Nathan Pierce from our Weapons Development Division to present an analysis," she said. "Doctor, please." Nathan Pierce was not what most people expected from a weapons scientist. He was short, thin, with messy hair and glasses that he constantly pushed up his nose. But his mind was one of the sharpest on Earth, and he had been reviewing the Krillian data non-stop since it arrived. "Thank you, Madam President," he said, bringing up new images on the holographic display. "I've studied everything the Pathfinder sent us. The Krillian ships are impressive. Their weapons are powerful. Their shields are strong. By every conventional measure, they should be able to destroy our entire fleet without breaking a sweat." "That's not helping, Doctor," someone muttered. Nathan smiled slightly. "I wasn't finished. Yes, they're stronger, but strong isn't the same as invincible. I've identified 3 potential weaknesses in their approach. First, their tactics are rigid. Look at how their ships moved. Perfect formation. Textbook military discipline. They fight by rules, by doctrine that's probably been the same for centuries. Second, their shields are designed to stop directed energy weapons and kinetic missiles. They're not optimized for dealing with nuclear explosions at close range or unconventional delivery methods. Third, and most important, they're arrogant. Ambassador Velcor made that clear. They think they've already won. They're not expecting a real fight. A representative from the European Federation leaned forward. "So what are you suggesting, Doctor?" "I'm suggesting we don't try to beat them at their own game," Nathan replied. "We can't build better ships in 30 days. We can't match their technology. But we can fight dirty. We can be unpredictable. We can use tactics they've never seen because they've never fought anyone desperate and crazy enough to try them." He pulled up historical records from Earth's wars, guerrilla warfare, asymmetric tactics, suicide attacks, things that civilizations with honor codes don't use. We make them afraid of us. We make fighting us so costly and unpredictable that they decide it's not worth it. "You're talking about terrorism," someone said, disgust in their voice. "I'm talking about survival," Nathan shot back. "When you're fighting someone bigger and stronger, you don't fight fair. You fight to win. You use every advantage you have, and our advantage is that we're unpredictable. We're innovative, we adapt. We've been fighting each other for thousands of years, and we've gotten very, very good at finding creative ways to kill." The chamber fell silent. Angela looked around at the faces of the representatives. She could see fear, anger, uncertainty, but she could also see something else. Determination. Pride. The same stubborn refusal to quit that had driven humanity to climb out of caves, to cross oceans, to reach for the stars. "I'm calling for a vote," she said. All in favor of accepting the Krillian Accord and submitting to their rule, raise your hand. 12 hands went up out of 50 representatives. Angela nodded slowly. All in favor of rejecting the Accord and preparing for war, raise your hand. 38 hands rose. The decision was made. Then we fight, Angela said. Admiral Stone, you have command of all military forces. Dr. Pierce, you have unlimited resources and authority to develop whatever weapons and tactics you think will work. We have 26 days left. Use them well. The next 3 weeks were a blur of activity. Every shipyard on Earth, Mars, and Europa worked around the clock. They couldn't build new warships from scratch in that time, but they could modify existing ones. They could add weapons, armor, and systems designed specifically to fight the Krillians. Captain Sophie Turner stood on the bridge of the Defiant, watching workers swarm over her ship through the viewports. The Defiant was one of Earth's newest warships, built just 2 years ago. Now it was being transformed into something else entirely. Nuclear missile pods were being attached to the hull. The shield generators were being rewired to focus all power forward, turning the ship into a battering ram if necessary. And in the cargo bay they were installing something Nathan Pierce called the Equalizer. Captain, do you really think this will work? Her first officer asked. Lieutenant Chris Wade was young, fresh out of the academy, and he looked terrified. Honestly, I have no idea, Sophie replied. But I know this. If we're going down swinging, and we're going to make them remember us. In a laboratory deep beneath Geneva, Nathan Pierce worked with a team of engineers on something that would have been considered a war crime if used against humans. It was a computer virus, but not like any virus Earth had ever created. This one was designed to infiltrate Krillian computer systems based on the energy signatures the Pathfinder had recorded. If it worked, it could shut down their ship's weapons, shields, and navigation all at once. If it didn't work, it would do nothing at all. But it was worth trying. The problem is delivery, one of the engineers said, staring at lines of code. We need to get close enough to their ships to transmit the virus. That means suicide runs. Then we'll find volunteers, Nathan said quietly. When people understand what's at stake, you'd be surprised how many are willing to sacrifice themselves. He was right. When the call went out for volunteers for high-risk missions, over 10,000 people applied within the first day. They knew they might not survive. They didn't care. They wanted to fight. Admiral Stone stood in the command center looking at tactical displays that showed Earth's defenses. They had 200 ships total. Most were small frigates and destroyers. Only 20 were heavy cruisers capable of standing up to serious firepower. Against a Krillian fleet, it wasn't much, but it was what they had. We need to control the battlefield, he told his tactical team. We fight near Earth where we can use the planet's gravity well and orbital defenses. We set up minefields. We position ships where they can support each other. We make them come to us, and we make every meter of space they cross cost them. A young officer raised her hand hesitantly. Sir, what if they just bombard Earth from a distance? Their weapons have the range. Kevin smiled grimly. Then we make sure they can't. We send fast attack ships to harass them constantly. We keep them off balance. We never give them time to set up for a long-range bombardment. It's called getting inside their decision loop. Keep them reacting to us instead of executing their plan. Back on the Pathfinder, Jake Morrison watched the countdown timer on his screen. 26 days had become 20, then 15, then 10. The Krillian ship stayed in formation, watching them, making sure they didn't try to escape. Jake had maintained communication with Ambassador Velcor, pretending to ask questions about the Accord, acting like humanity was seriously considering acceptance. He could tell the Krillian was getting impatient. Commander, Lisa said one evening as they sat in the mess hall, do you think we have any chance at all? Jake looked at his coffee, swirling the dark liquid around. Honestly? Probably not. But you know what? I don't care. I've been thinking about something my grandfather told me when I was a kid. He was in the... High Commander Zarthek stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Dominance, and looked at the primitive blue planet growing larger on the view screen. Behind him, 50 warships moved in perfect formation. It was more firepower than had been assembled in a single place for over a century. It was complete overkill for dealing with a species that had barely learned to leave their own solar system. But Zarthek wanted to make a statement. He wanted every species in the galaxy to see what happened when someone defied the Krillian dominion. The humans would be destroyed so completely that their name would become a warning to others. Submit or die. It was the old law, the one that had kept the Dominion strong for 3,000 years. Tactical scan of their defenses, he ordered. His tactical officer, a young Krillian named Sothkar, worked his console and brought up data on the main display. High Commander, they have approximately 200 vessels arranged in defensive positions around the planet. Most are small escort ships. 20 appear to be capital ships, though their tonnage is less than half of our destroyers. They have also deployed orbital weapons platforms and what appears to be a minefield in the outer approach vectors. Zarthek laughed, a harsh sound that echoed through the bridge. 200 primitive ships. They think this is a defense? We could destroy them all with 20 vessels, but we won't. We'll use all 50. We'll make it quick and overwhelming. Let them see the futility of resistance in their final moments. High Commander, Sothkar said hesitantly. The humans are broadcasting a message. Audio only. Play it, Zarthek commanded. A human voice filled the bridge. It was Admiral Kevin Stone speaking with a calmness that bordered on eerie. Krillian Fleet, this is Admiral Stone of the Earth Defense Force. You've come to our home to enslave or destroy us. We have a message for you. You're not welcome here. You're not going to take our world. You're not going to make us kneel. This is your last chance to turn around and leave. After this, there's only war. And we promise you, we're going to make you regret that you ever heard the name human. The bridge crew looked at each other, some amused, some confused. Zarthek simply smiled. Brave words from a dead species, he said. All ships advance to attack formation. Target their capital ships first. Show them what real power looks like. The Krillian fleet moved forward, closing the distance to Earth. The human ships held their positions, not retreating, not fleeing, just waiting. It reminded Zarthek of prey animals that froze when predators approached. Fear paralysis. Good. It would make this quicker. Then the humans opened fire. It wasn't a coordinated volley from their main fleet. Instead, dozens of small ships that had been hiding in the asteroid field and behind the moon suddenly burst forward at maximum speed. They were moving too fast, burning their engines in a way that would destroy the ships if they kept it up for more than a few minutes. But they weren't planning to keep it up. They were on suicide runs. Point defense systems, engage, Zarthek ordered, still calm. The Krillian ships could easily shoot down these foolish attackers. The point defense weapons fired. Streams of energy that should have vaporized the human ships. Several did explode, bright flowers of fire in the black of space, but others got through, their erratic flight patterns and sudden direction changes making them harder to target than expected. And when they reached the Krillian formation, they detonated. Nuclear explosions lit up space. The Krillian shields absorbed most of the energy, but several ships rocked from the impacts. Warning lights flashed on consoles across the Eternal Dominance's bridge. Damage report, Zarthek snapped, his calm finally cracking. Minor damage to 3 destroyers, Sothkar reported. Shields held, but they're using atomic weapons in suicide attacks. This is not normal combat doctrine. They're desperate, Zarthek said. Desperate species do desperate things. It doesn't matter. Continue the advance, but the human attack had bought time. While the Krillian formation was dealing with the suicide ships, the main human fleet moved into new positions. They didn't advance to meet the Krillians in open space. Instead, they spread out, using Earth's orbital platforms as cover, positioning themselves so the Krillians couldn't target them all at once without exposing their flanks. They're trying to negate our numerical advantage, Sothkar observed, forcing us to fight in smaller engagements. Zarthek studied the tactical display and felt a grudging respect. Whoever was commanding the human fleet understood basic tactics. It wouldn't save them, but it was smarter than he expected. Split the fleet, he ordered. Groups of 10 ships. Engage them on multiple fronts. Overwhelm their defenses through sheer firepower. The Krillian fleet divided and moved to engage. That's when the second surprise hit. The minefield they had detected wasn't just mines. Mixed in with the passive explosives were active weapons platforms that had been pretending to be debris. When the Krillian ships entered the field, these platforms came to life, firing missiles and energy weapons at point-blank range. 3 Krillian destroyers took hits before they could respond. One lost its shields completely. Another had its main weapon disabled. Trickery, Zarthek hissed. They hide their weapons like cowards. On the bridge of the Defiant, Captain Sophie Turner watched the tactical display with fierce satisfaction. The minefield worked. 3 of their ships are damaged. Now we press the advantage. All ships weapons free. Target the destroyer with no shields. Hit it with everything we have. 20 human ships concentrated their fire on a single Krillian destroyer. Energy beams and missiles converged on the vessel. Its armor held against the first wave and the second. But the third wave found weak points. Explosions rippled across the destroyer's hull. It tried to retreat, but the human ships pursued, pouring fire into it relentlessly. Finally, its power core breached. The explosion was visible from Earth, a bright star that flared and died. The first Krillian ship had fallen. On the Eternal Dominance, alarm bells sounded. Sothkar stared at his display in disbelief. "High Commander, the Talon's reach has been destroyed. The humans destroyed it." The bridge went silent. In 3,000 years of Krillian expansion, the Dominion had never lost a ship to a species on its first contact. The concept was unthinkable. Yet the wreckage spreading across the tactical display said otherwise. Zarthek felt rage building in his chest. All ships converge on that position. Destroy every human vessel there. Show them what happens when they draw Krillian blood. But the human ships didn't stay to fight. They scattered, breaking into smaller groups using their superior maneuverability to avoid direct confrontation with the larger Krillian force. They hit and ran, fired from unexpected angles, then fled before the Krillians could return effective fire. Lieutenant Maya Rodriguez flew her fighter through the battle, her heart pounding. She was part of a squadron of 40 small craft, too small for the Krillian sensors to track effectively individually. They swarmed around the Krillian ships like angry bees, firing at weak points, engines, sensor arrays. They couldn't do major damage, but they could distract and annoy. "This is Viper Lead," she called over the radio. "All fighters, focus on the cruiser at coordinate 774. Their point defense is tracking too slow. We can get inside their envelope." The fighters dove toward the Krillian cruiser, weaving and spinning in patterns no sane pilot would attempt. The Krillian gunners tried to track them, but their targeting computers were designed for conventional attack patterns. The humans were flying like madmen, pulling maneuvers that should have torn their ships apart. Several fighters did break up from the stress, but the rest got through. They fired missiles at the cruiser's engine ports at almost point-blank range, then scattered. The cruiser's engines exploded. It didn't destroy the ship, but it left it dead in space, unable to move or maneuver. A sitting target disabled another one, Maya reported, breathing hard from the high G turns. "But we lost 6 fighters. Viper Squadron is down to 18 ships." Admiral Stone watched the battle from his command center on Earth. The tactical display showed a chaotic mess of fighting across near-Earth space. They had destroyed 1 Krillian ship and disabled 2 more, but they had lost 40 human vessels. The math wasn't good. At this rate, they would run out of ships long before the Krillians did. "We need to change the dynamic," he said to his staff. "Deploy the Defiance special package. It's time to see if Dr. Pierce's mad plan works." Sophie Turner received the order and felt her stomach clench. The special package. She knew what that meant. Her ship would have to get close to the Krillian flagship, close enough to transmit the virus Nathan Pierce had developed. It was a suicide mission in all but name. "All hands, this is the captain," she announced over the ship-wide system. "We've been given a mission that's probably going to get us all killed. If anyone wants to transfer to another ship, now's your chance. I won't think less of you." Nobody moved. Her crew stayed at their stations. Lieutenant Chris Wade looked at her and smiled. "Where else would we go, Captain? You give the best suicide missions." Sophie laughed despite everything. "Helm, plot a course directly toward the Eternal Dominance. Full speed. Engineering, reroute all power to forward shields. We're going to ram right down their throat." The lights in the hospital were too bright. Jake Morrison sat in a chair by the window, looking out at the scarred landscape of Earth below. The battle had been 3 days ago. They had won, if you could call it that. The Krillian fleet had retreated, limping away with barely 30 ships left out of the 50 that had arrived. But the cost had been terrible. Earth had lost 137 ships. Over 18,000 people dead. Sophie Turner, Danny Foster, so many others. Their names scrolled through Jake's mind like a memorial list that would never end. He had survived only because the Pathfinder had been held in reserve, protecting the evacuation routes if the battle had gone worse. He felt guilty for being alive. "You look terrible," Lisa Chang said from the doorway. She was alive too, though she had a bandage on her arm where shrapnel had caught her when part of the Pathfinder's hull had been damaged. "I feel terrible," Jake replied. "We won. Why doesn't it feel like winning?" Lisa sat down next to him. "Because winning cost us people we cared about. Because victory came at a price we didn't want to pay. But Jake, we did win. The Krillians came here to crush us, to make us submit, and we sent them running. That matters, does it? Jake asked. They'll be back. Next time with more ships, more weapons. They'll learn from their mistakes and they'll come back to finish what they started. We bought time. That's all. President Angela Hughes chose that moment to enter the room. She looked older than she had a week ago. Lines of stress and grief carved into her face, but her eyes were still sharp, still determined. Commander Morrison, Dr. Chang, she said. I'm glad you're both recovering. We need to talk about what happens next. Jake stood up, wincing slightly from bruised ribs. Madam President, I assume you're here to tell us to prepare for round 2. Actually, no, Angela said, and there was something in her voice that made both Jake and Lisa look at her carefully. Something unexpected has happened. We've received communications from inside the Krillian Dominion, from Krillians who want to help us. Jake blinked. That's impossible. They're all loyal to the Empire. That's how they've stayed in power for 3,000 years. Angela pulled up a holographic display from a small device. A Krillian face appeared, but this one looked different from Ambassador Velcor or High Commander Zarthek. This one looked older, with scars across his face and eyes that held something that looked almost like regret. This is Counselor Thalrin, Angela said. He's part of the Krillian High Council. He sent this message through encrypted channels. Dr. Chang, I'd like you to watch this and tell me if you think it's legitimate. The message played. Thalrin spoke slowly, carefully as if choosing each word with precision. People of Earth, my name is Thalrin. I am a member of the High Council of the Krillian Dominion, though I suspect not for much longer if this message is discovered. I am contacting you because what you did 3 days ago changed everything. For 3,000 years, our empire has conquered every species we encountered. We told ourselves it was natural, that we were bringing order to chaos, that lesser species needed our guidance. The truth is, we were bullies. And bullies only understand one language, force. The holographic Thalrin paused, then continued. When your species refused to submit, when you fought back despite being hopelessly outmatched, something happened in our empire. Whispers started. Questions were asked. If humans could resist, why couldn't others? If one species could bloody our fleet, maybe we weren't as invincible as we claimed. You didn't just defeat High Commander Zarthek's fleet. You defeated the idea that the Dominion cannot be challenged. Lisa leaned forward, studying the Krillian's face intently. This is real. Look at his body language. The way he's speaking. He believes what he's saying. The message wasn't finished. Thalrin's image looked directly at them. There are others like me. Krillians who are tired of endless expansion, tired of crushing other civilizations, tired of serving an empire built on fear. We cannot help you openly, not yet, but we can provide intelligence. We can tell you when Zarthek's next attack is coming. We can give you information about his fleet composition, his tactics, his plans. And when the time comes, we may be able to do more. But you must understand something. The High Council will not let your defiance stand. They're already preparing a much larger fleet. Hundreds of ships. They mean to destroy Earth completely, to make an example so terrifying that no one will ever dare resist again. The message ended. Jake and Lisa looked at each other, then at President Hughes. When is this attack coming? Jake asked. Thalrin says 3 weeks, Angela replied. Zarthek is gathering every ship he can. He's calling in vessels from across the Empire. They're not going to make the same mistakes twice. 3 weeks, Lisa said softly. We used 30 days to prepare for the first attack and barely survived. How are we supposed to prepare for something even bigger in 3 weeks? We don't do it alone, Angela said. That's the other piece of news. Thalrin isn't the only one who contacted us. We've received messages from 3 other species. All of them are under Krillian rule. All of them saw what we did, and all of them want to help. Jake felt something stir in his chest. Hope, maybe, or just the stubborn refusal to give up that seemed to define humanity. Who are they? He asked. Angela pulled up more images. The Villani. They're an insectoid species that were conquered 200 years ago. They're not warriors, but they're incredible engineers. They're offering to share technology and help us upgrade our ships. The Korthaxi, aquatic beings that were subjugated 50 years ago. They're offering supplies and resources. And the Zemtar. They're a silicon-based species that the Krillians enslaved 3 centuries ago. They're offering something else, soldiers. They say if we're going to fight, they want to fight beside us. This is insane, Lisa said. But she was smiling. We're starting a rebellion. Not just for Earth, but for everyone the Krillians have conquered. That's exactly what we're doing, Angela agreed. Because Thalrin is right. We didn't just win a battle. We broke something in the Dominion. We showed that resistance is possible. Now we have to follow through. We have to win not just for ourselves, but for every species that's been living under Krillian rule. Over the next 2 weeks, Earth became the center of something unprecedented. Ships from the Velani arrived, bringing with them technology that would have taken humans decades to develop on their own. Energy shields that were more efficient, weapons with better targeting systems, engine designs that were faster and more reliable. Engineer Jack Freeman worked 18-hour days integrating the new technology into Earth's surviving ships. He had lost friends in the battle, good people who had trusted his designs. Now he was determined to make sure the next generation of human warships would be better, stronger, more capable of protecting his world. This Velani shield generator is brilliant, he told his team, examining the alien device. It uses a rotating frequency that makes it harder to penetrate. If we can install these on all our ships, we'll be much harder to kill. The Korthaxi supplies meant that Earth could build more ships faster. Raw materials, refined metals, complex components that would have taken months to manufacture were suddenly available. The shipyards worked day and night, constructing new vessels to replace the ones that had been lost. But the most significant change came from the Zemtar. 5,000 of their warriors arrived on Earth. Strange beings made of crystalline structures that could withstand environments that would kill humans instantly. They didn't speak the same language, didn't breathe the same air, didn't even have the same basic biology. But they all understood one thing. Freedom Admiral Stone met with the Zemtar commander, a being named Crystallis who communicated through light pulses that had to be translated by computers. "Why are you doing this?" Kevin asked. "You don't know us. You don't owe us anything." The translation came back slowly. "For 300 years we have been slaves. We have mined asteroids. We have built Krillian ships. We have lived and died at their command. When we heard that a species fought back and won, we felt something we had not felt in generations. Hope. We fight not just for you, but for ourselves. If you fall, hope dies. If you win, the galaxy changes." Kevin nodded slowly. "Then we'll try not to disappoint you. Can your people operate in space combat?" "Better than humans," the translation said, and Kevin could have sworn the crystal being was amused. "We do not need atmosphere. We do not fear vacuum. Give us weapons and a way to reach Krillian ships, and we will show you what rage looks like when you have been oppressed for centuries." The plan came together slowly but steadily. They couldn't just defend Earth again. The Krillians would come with overwhelming force this time, so they had to change the rules. They had to take the fight to the enemy, disrupt their plans, make them react instead of attack. Jake Morrison found himself promoted to captain and given command of a new ship, the Horizon. It was built using Velani technology and human innovation, faster than anything the Krillians had seen. His mission was to lead a strike force deep into Krillian territory and sabotage their staging areas before the big attack could launch. "This is crazy," Ben Carter said when Jake told him about the mission. Ben had survived the battle and was now Jake's first officer. "We're going to..." High Commander Zarthek stared at the holographic display showing Earth and felt rage burning in his chest like acid. 3 weeks. 3 weeks of humiliation, of explanations to the High Council, of watching his reputation crumble. The human raid on Torvin had delayed everything. Manufacturing was still recovering. Supply chains were a mess. Ships were arriving at wrong coordinates because the logistics computer still had corrupt data. But finally, he had his fleet. 227 warships, the largest military force assembled in Krillian history. Every available vessel from across the Dominion had been called in. This time there would be no mistakes. No tricks, no mercy. Earth would burn, and every other species in the galaxy would see what happened when you defied the Dominion. "High Commander," Sothkar said quietly. He had stayed loyal despite the disasters, and Zarthek valued that. "We're receiving intelligence reports. The humans have been busy. They have allied with several subjugated species, Velani, Korthaxi, Zemtar. There are reports of technology sharing and resource pooling." "It doesn't matter," Zarthek said. "They can have all the allies they want. We have 200 ships. Even if they've doubled their fleet, we still outnumber them 10 to 1. This ends today. What Zarthek didn't know was that Counselor Thalrin was listening to every word. The old counselor had placed monitoring devices throughout the flagship, feeding real-time intelligence to Earth. He sat in his chambers, watching his people prepare for what might be their final act of imperial aggression, and felt something he hadn't felt in decades. Shame. The Krillian fleet arrived at Earth's solar system in perfect formation, a wall of warships that stretched across the view screen like an approaching storm. On Earth, alarms sounded. Admiral Kevin Stone stood in his command center, watching the enemy approach on tactical displays, and allowed himself a tight smile. "They came with everything," he said to his staff. "Good. That means they think they need everything. Signal all ships. Execute Battle Plan Omega." What Zarthek saw on his sensors confused him. The human fleet was arranged around Earth, yes, but there were many more ships than before. Too many. His tactical officer counted them twice to be sure. "High Commander, the humans have at least 150 vessels, and not all of them are human design. I'm reading Zemtar, Vellani, and other energy signatures I don't recognize." "A coalition," Zarthek said, his voice dripping with contempt. "Slaves banding together. It changes nothing. All ships advance. Destroy them all." The Krillian fleet moved forward, and the human coalition moved to meet them. But they didn't charge in a straight line. They moved in groups, wings of ships that swooped and circled using tactics that made them hard to predict. The Zemtar vessels led several of these groups, their crystalline pilots executing maneuvers that would have killed organic beings with the G-forces involved. The first exchange of fire lit up space. Krillian energy beams met human missiles and Vellani plasma weapons. Shields flared. Ships on both sides took damage, but the humans had learned from the first battle. They didn't try to stand and trade shots with the superior Krillian firepower. They hit and ran, struck from angles, focused fire on single targets until they fell. Captain Ryan Brooks commanded the new carrier Victory, built in the frantic weeks since the first battle. His ship carried 200 fighters, small craft that could move and turn in ways the big ships couldn't. When the battle started, he launched all of them at once, all fighter wings. "You know your targets," he said over the command frequency. "Stay with your wingmen. Cover each other. And for God's sake, come back alive." Lieutenant Maya Rodriguez was flying again, leading a mixed squadron of human and Zemtar fighters. The crystal beings flew craft that were essentially weapons with engines attached, no life support needed. They flew alongside the human fighters like a school of predatory fish, and Maya had to admit they were good. "All fighters, this is Viper Lead," she called. "Targeting priority is their carrier group. We take out their fighter launch capability. We own the small combat space. Let's move." The fighters swept toward the Krillian carriers, weaving through defensive fire. Several exploded, bright flowers of flame that made Maya's heart clench, but the rest got through. They fired missiles at close range, targeting hangar bays and launch tubes. The Krillian carriers tried to defend themselves, but they were designed to launch fighters, not fight off swarms of them. 3 Krillian carriers suffered catastrophic damage in the first 5 minutes. Hangar bays exploded. Launch systems were destroyed. The fighters they had been preparing to launch were incinerated before they could lift off. Zarthek watched in growing horror as his carriers burned. How are they doing this?" "They're not fighting fair," Sothkar said, and there was something almost like admiration in his voice. "They're not trying to defeat us ship to ship. They're targeting specific systems, disrupting our capabilities. They learned from the first battle, High Commander. They learned that they can't match our strength, so they're not trying to. They're fighting asymmetrically. Then we adapt," Zarthek snarled. "All ships break formation. Hunter-killer groups. Pursue and destroy. Show no mercy." The Krillian fleet split into smaller groups and began aggressive pursuit of the human ships. For a moment it looked like it might work. The Krillians were faster in straight-line speed, more powerful in direct combat. Several human ships were caught and destroyed, their wrecks adding to the debris field growing around Earth. But then the second part of Admiral Stone's plan activated. The human ships that were being pursued led the Krillians into kill zones where entire wings of coalition ships waited. The Krillians found themselves surrounded, taking fire from multiple directions. They tried to retreat, but the humans had learned to predict their movements. More Krillian ships fell. On the horizon, Jake Morrison coordinated a group of 20 ships in a running battle with 30 Krillians. His group included human vessels, Zamtar combat ships, and 3 Villani engineering ships that were supposed to be non-combat, but had been equipped with powerful mining lasers that turned out to work pretty well as weapons. All ships, Pattern Delta 7, Jake called. Lead them toward the moon. We have friends waiting there. The Horizon and its group fled toward Earth's moon with the Krillians in pursuit. The enemy ships were faster and gaining. Jake watched the range close on his tactical display and timed it carefully. When the Krillians were committed to the pursuit, when they were too close to the moon to break off safely, he gave the signal. Dozens of weapons platforms that had been hidden on the lunar surface activated. They were built using Korthaxi technology, powerful railguns that used magnetic acceleration to fire projectiles at incredible speeds. At this range, they were devastating. The Krillian ships flew directly into a wall of metal moving at a significant fraction of light speed. 8 Krillian ships were destroyed instantly. 5 more were crippled. The survivors scattered in confusion, their formation broken, their confidence shattered. That's for Sophie, Jake said quietly, thinking of the captain who had sacrificed herself in the first battle. And for everyone else we lost. Ben, take us around. Let's finish off those crippled ships before they can retreat. The battle had been raging for 2 hours and the tide was turning. The Krillians still had more ships, still had more firepower, but they were losing. For the first time in 3,000 years, the Krillian Dominion was being beaten in open combat. On the Eternal Dominance, Counselor Thalren made his decision. He had been watching the battle, watching his people die, watching the Empire crumble. It was time to act. He walked onto the bridge where Zarthek stood gripping his command chair and shouting orders. "High Commander," Thalren said calmly. "I'm relieving you of command." Zarthek spun around, his face twisted with rage and confusion. "What? You have no authority here. This is a military operation." "I have the authority of the High Council," Thalren said, and he pulled out a weapon, a small energy pistol that he aimed at Zarthek. Or rather, I had it. "I've resigned from the Council. But before I did, I issued orders to every ship in this fleet. Stand down or I will kill you myself." Sothkar and the other bridge officers looked between the 2 Krillians, uncertain what to do. Thalren raised his voice so everyone could hear. "For 3,000 years we have conquered and enslaved. We told ourselves it was necessary, that we were bringing order, that lesser species needed our guidance. We were wrong. The humans showed us that. They fought back not because they were strong, but because they refused to kneel. And now look at us. 200 ships sent to crush one primitive world, and we're losing. Not because they have better technology, not because they have more ships, but because they have something we lost centuries ago. The will to fight for something bigger than themselves." Zarthek laughed bitterly. "You're a traitor. You've betrayed everything the Dominion stands for." "No," Thalren said. "I'm trying to save what the Dominion could become. A true alliance of species, not an empire of slaves. Surrender, Zarthek. Order the fleet to stand down. Let's end this madness." For a long moment, no one moved. Then Sothkar spoke quietly. "High Commander, we've lost 53 ships. Another 40 are severely damaged. The humans have lost 30. At this rate, we'll be destroyed."